Hello and welcome back to session 5 of the Bible study of the Gospel of Matthew. Today we will be covering the second discourse. Basically, we will focus on chapter 10. This is called the Missionary Sermon. Last time we spoke about the fact that Jesus summoned his disciples. We read about the names of the 12 disciples of Jesus. And in this chapter today, we will be speaking about the mission that Jesus entrusts to them. But before we start exploring the text, I would like to invite your attention to the fact that Jesus called his 12 disciples, and those disciples had a wide range of personalities and backgrounds and approaches, um, not only to the problems Israel faced in the first century, but also the world where they would go and they would preach the message of the kingdom, basically preaching Christianity. Some of those disciples were fishermen, others were tax collectors. So different backgrounds and different styles. And this what brings richness to the message of Jesus. And when we reflect on that, we we want to focus also on the reality that our personal individual backgrounds and likes and tastes will affect greatly the way that we present the Word of God to people around us. You know, there's this general misconception that that hires and priests should be a certain way, as if there was a mold and all followers of Christ should follow or should fit that mold. But when we look at the disciples, we see that there was no mold. Each had their personality, and the traits of their personalities helped them to effectively preach the Word of God. So let's take a look at the biblical texts and see what is the instruction or are the instructions that Jesus is giving to the 12. Take a minute and read the text here. The first thing that catches our attention here is the geography. In his instructions, Jesus is telling his disciples not to go among the Gentiles, not to go to the towns of the Samaritans, but go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So Israel, who had received the promise or the promises from God in the Old Testament, now those promises are being fulfilled. And this first part of the mission is exclusive to the people of Israel. And we will see this changing at the end when we go to chapter 28 and we read the Grand Commission of Jesus Christ. Jesus is instructing the disciples to kind of go to the entire world, to go and preach to everyone. But here, this first mission here has more of a local sense to it. So what are they going to do as they go and to the house of Israel? Basically, Jesus wants them to go and proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. This is very consistent. It is the same message that John the Baptist proclaimed. It is the same message with which Jesus started his ministry. And now Jesus is instructing his disciples to carry on and take the same message to everywhere that they go and they preach. So it's not only words that they are going to take to people, but there are a lot of actions. So what Jesus is saying here is very important. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. So Jesus wants or gives the authority to the disciples to demonstrate the power of the kingdom of heaven to the places that they're going and the people to whom they are presenting this message that the kingdom of heaven has come near. This is a very inspiring message, not only for the first century Israel, where people had the hope and they were expecting their Messiah, but this is basically the message of the church. if we live and we worship and we experience a church that has very highly polished message, very good words in another way, but there are no actions, then something fundamentally is missing in the life of that church. So caring for people who are part of the church and showing God's genuine love and being concerned of the people who are part of the church is the core of our mission. And we should not forget that. And when I speak about church, I'm not speaking only about the leaders, but I'm speaking about people who associate themselves with the church. Church is not about words. It's about what we do to one another, how we show God's love and concern to one another as the followers of Christ. At the end of study 4 last week, we said that Jesus identified a problem. The problem was that the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. So we said that Jesus, looking at the leaders or the ones who were supposed to lead and shepherd Israel, were corrupt. And subsequently, he summoned the 12 and made them the new leaders, the new shepherds of the people of Israel. And now we read how Jesus is giving sets of instructions to make these people, his disciples, to be different kind of leaders, something different than the people of the first century of Israel had accustomed to see. So basically what Jesus says here, take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for journey, and no sandals or staff, for the laborers deserve their food. So to go without these basic necessities would be a sign of the disciples having placed all their trust in God and having renounced wealth and comfort. And it had also a prophetic image to it, a sign bearing witness to Jesus' teaching that the Heavenly Father will provide for those who seek first the kingdom and trust in Him. The rest of the teachings that Jesus gives is very powerful also. He instructs the disciples to find the person and make that person's house the kind of a hub or a small church, as we eventually we will read in the book of Acts, and uh, greet the people and let your peace come upon it. The peace that is Jesus speaking about is not the ordinary way of greeting, not the typical shalom that the Jewish people are accustomed to, but this is associated with the arrival of God's kingdom. And if the house rejects the apostles, they will not receive the peace of the kingdom. And if they reject the apostle, reject the peace, not only the peace will return to you, but those who reject the message of the kingdom, Jesus basically affiliates them with Sodom and Gomorrah. That's terrible. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off your dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. So to shake the dust from your feet, it's a symbolic act that we don't have anything to do with these people. That's very powerful. And Sodom and Gomorrah, they were destroyed for their wickedness, and basically Jesus is saying that's the same judgment for those who will not welcome the message of kingdom. Um, it's very, very serious to be in a position where you hear the word of God, you hear the proclamation of the kingdom, and you reject it. It's not like, okay, we'll give you another chance. But the words of Jesus here are very specific and very harsh. In this next section, the hostility that the apostles will face comes into sharp focus. They are being sent like sheep into the midst of wolves. And this is an image of vulnerability and helplessness before the fierce attackers. Yet the apostles are not to be passive when enemies assail them. They are to be wise as serpents, so prudently anticipating threats and finding ways to survive. But they must at the same time be innocent as doves, or some other translations would say simple as doves. And the word innocent or simple means unmixed. The Armenian version of it, miamid, suggesting that the apostles' shrewd tactic should be animated by pure motives and single-mindedness for their ministry. So shrewd or wise sometimes could have a negative connotation, but that should never lead them to seek survival or advantage in a way that compromises their integrity. So attacks will come, obviously, from various directions. Um, there will be opposition, and we read about the opposition here from different or on different levels. Uh, the local Jewish synagogues, the Gentile rulers, and family members. So this is what um, the disciples should expect as part of becoming a disciple of Jesus and following him. And this is very difficult uh, stuff to kind of experience. But what Jesus reminds them is that the disciple is not above the teacher. And this notion, needs no explanation, but it was expected that the disciple should become like the teacher, and that the slave should share in lot of his master. The disciples, however, do not anticipate how harshly their teacher and Lord will be rejected. So this is more about the type of rejection that Jesus is going to experience. And the very last sentences here is very poignant, because if they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of the household? And that's very difficult, because as we read about it last time, these are the Pharisees who accused Jesus of driving out demons by the power of the prince of demons. Uh, and this will become obviously the accusation to plot his crucifixion. If this is what they do to the master, and the disciples should be also rejected and persecuted. So hearing all these challenging words, to be persecuted by the synagogues, that is the local Jewish authorities, by the Gentiles, the foreigners, and by our household members, it's very harsh, very difficult to accept. What's the antidote to that? So Jesus says, do not fear. So have no fear of them. Have no fear. This is the antidote that Jesus presents. The disciples should proclaim the gospel without being afraid. It would be tempting to stop preaching the gospels, or to change the message, or to soften the message in order to make things easier and protect themselves from suffering. But Jesus is entrusting the full gospel message to his disciples, and proclaim the message from the housetops. So there's this very interesting teaching here. What I say to you, or let's start from the top. For nothing is covered up will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. This is sometimes we kind of think that God will uncover all secrets and you cannot hide the secret, but that's not the genuine meaning of the word. It's about the word of God, the fact that it is so powerful that cannot be hidden. You cannot cover the truth. The truth stands alone, and it stands, and it shines, and you cannot do anything to cover it. And Jesus encourages his disciples to, um, whatever they hear whisper to proclaim it from the housetops. What could happen when they have a proclamation like that? Obviously, there's the threat and the fear uh, of dying, right? People might kill them, and we know that's what happened to a lot of disciples. So, if faced with a choice between dying for the sake of Christ or denying Him to save one's life, we must remember that the worst thing our enemies can do is kill the body. They cannot kill the soul. So, it's better to save one's soul than saves the physical life. And this is, we would think that these words were said 2,000 years ago, and this message belonged to people of uh, the first centuries who were part of the church. But it turns out that this became part or it's part of the Christian witness in the Middle East. Or Africa. There are so many countries that people are killed, are persecuted for following the Lord Jesus Christ. And look at the bottom here, the bottom of the slide. Look, hear the words of Jesus. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. This is very powerful. This is life-changing. It has changed the life of so many followers of Christ. And us, as Armenians, we belong to that group of people. It's only 100 years ago, this week, that the genocide started. And yes, the geopolitics were part of it, but religion was a big part of it also. Remember the name that they gave to us to describe us. They call us gavurs, and that's a Turkish way of saying sinners. So the religious part was a major role in the genocide. Not too long ago, Armenian communities in the Middle East were persecuted because of our faith. In 2014, when my hometown, Kesap, was invaded, the most damages were done to the churches. They went to the cemeteries and they destroyed the crosses. And yes, there were people who were killed at that time because they did not want to denounce Christ. That's very harsh. And what does that tell about our faith today? We don't face that kind of hardship, but there are other problems that we face. And maybe nobody's putting a gun in our head and saying us or asking us to denounce Jesus, but the type of persecution that we endure is different. The moral choices that we have to make, the lifestyle that we choose to live, is it truly reflecting Jesus Christ and our faith? Are we acknowledging Christ before people, or we're ashamed of that? So this is the message that we need to internalize when we read these words. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. There are numerous occasions every day. With every choice that we make in our lives, are we acknowledging Jesus before others? Or we're afraid to say that, yes, I believe in Jesus Christ. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. Not peace, but sword. This is controversial. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. This is controversial, as I say before, because we read in the first discourse, Jesus praising the peacemakers. Few slides ago, Jesus instructed his disciples to go and say, "Peace be with you," as they entered the house where they chose to to stay. But what has changed here a few verses later? So we need to kind of try to understand this a little bit differently. The sword is not meant to be understood as an actual military weapon. The sword is used metaphorically here. Um, the meaning that Jesus had in mind here, uh, it's about the turmoil that the family relationships will experience. For I have come to set a man against the father, daughter against the mother, and daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. This is universal, by the way. Mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws don't get well. But this is about the proclamation of the kingdom and the division, not because of the message itself, but because of the ways people receive it. There will be divisions. Responses will vary from full reception to hostile rejection, and this will cause discord, hostility within the families. So, sword is not a weapon, but it's something that divides, and that's the message that we need to understand from the words of Jesus here. In verses 37 and 39, or through 39, we read about the demands that Jesus has, to be a true follower. Um, Speaking about the family here, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So this could be a hyperbole here, because obviously every one of us, especially when I think about my relationships, my children, I love them, but God wants us to put Him first, even before our children, before our parents, before our loved ones. God has to be number one in our lives, and a lot of us struggle with that. I don't know where is God in the rank of our priorities. But when we read the Gospel of Matthew, when we read these words, it is very clear where God wants to be in our lives. And the second part in verse 38 and onwards, whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Obviously, Jesus is talking about his crucifixion. He's talking about a lot of disciples who will take these words literally, and they will give up their life as a witness, as a testimony for their faith, and they will be martyrs. Um, in Armenian, the word for martyrs is vaga, and vaga is a witness, someone who dies witnessing their faith. But Jesus does not want us to die and to be martyrs for His sake all the time. We're not ruling that out, but that's not the destiny of every one of us. But there's a different type of dying. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake, will find it. It is that the killing of the ego, and the the dying daily in our egos and in our selfish ways, so that we give room for Jesus to live in us. This is very, very profound. When we read the works of St. Paul, he proclaims and he says, "It's not me who lives, but it is Jesus Christ who lives in me." And, St. Paul has got to that point where he is comfortably able to say, "It's not me, it's Jesus who lives in me." And this is why we need to have the saints as role models in our lives, so that we can learn how our Christian life could be lived at its best. They teach us. And if we are able to follow them, sometimes if we are able to imitate them, then we will experience advancement in our life of faith. And finally, Jesus speaks about rewards, and the rewards are not physical or material rewards, because he says, whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. So, in other words, the disciples are like ambassadors. Welcoming the ambassador, you are welcoming the person who sent that ambassador. You are welcoming the state. So, this is about the authority of the apostles that Jesus gives to them. And so the reward here is about the people who receive and welcome the apostles and receive and welcome the message of Jesus. And verse 42, whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. So it's not about only how we accept, but what we do with our message, with that message that we have received, how we treat people around us. And we're going to read more about, this cup of cold water in the coming chapters of Matthew. So God, who sends Jesus Christ, or Jesus Christ incarnated, brings the message of the kingdom of God is at hand, the kingdom of God is here, and he gives that message to his disciples. And the disciples, who later on become apostles, they take that message and they go and they spread the word in the world. We look at the history of our people, the Armenian people, and we look at our church. And there's a reason why our church is called Armenian Apostolic Church, because our faith is based on the teachings of the apostles. We know that the two of out of the 12, Thaddeus and Bartholomew, will come to Armenia, and both of them will lose their life in Armenia. And the blood that is shed will be the seed of faith that will grow on that holy land. And Armenia will be the first nation to declare Christianity as its state religion. This is such a proud moment for us to call ourselves the Armenian Apostolic Church. It means that the seeds of faith were sown by the apostles. We maintain something from the original teaching of our Lord Jesus Christ, and we have that apostolic succession, which it's the legitimate guarantee of our church, of the life of our church, the grace of the Holy Spirit working in our church. We live at times where the church is persecuted, and we pray for that persecuted church. We pray, I want you to pray for the Armenian church. We may live in very uncertain times, and we want God to continue to guide us to wherever God thinks is the best for us. We trust God's will, and we want God to protect and be always in the center of the Armenian church. I will stop here. We will continue next week. Thank you very much for your attention. This is Der Narek, the pastor of St. Sarkis Church. God bless you.